Alright, so today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest topics in AP Environmental Science, pollution, which usually always appears on at least one FRQ, maybe 2 or 3 FRQs, and usually always appears on at least 10% of MCs, probably upwards to 10 to 20% is a rough estimate of MC problems that pollution would appear on. So this is one of the biggest topics, and today we're going to be talking about the subparts of pollution and how to tackle all the FRQ and MC problems regarding pollution.
Okay, so the first type of pollution I want to talk about is water pollution. Now there's a lot of types of pollutants that can go into water, which include untreated sewage. When there's untreated sewage, this can carry bacteria such as fecal coliform, which is a pathogen that's a bacteria and causes harm to animals that can, when they digest it. Okay. Another type of water pollution is plastic waste. Now you've probably heard about plastic waste, like it gets in the seas, and when like marine organisms eat them, they can choke on them, and that's a problem. And so, yeah, it's a pollutant. There's chemicals such as arsenic, mercury, and lead, and these all get into the water and mix with the water and can cause harm to ecosystems. Okay, so there's certain ways that water pollution can actually get into the water. One of them is spilling or leakages. The most notable type of this is, and most common, and it's really unfortunate, is oil spills. An example is the BP oil spill that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. Another one is runoff, and that's when chemicals or waste that were on land get carried into bodies of water from like rain or other flowing water, and they get bring into bodies of water and into marine ecosystems. Alright, so those are the main types of ways of getting the pollution into the water, but how we classify them is point source or non-point source. And these are really easy to remember. It's basically in the name. Point source is where it has a definitive point of origin, which is like if it's come from a factory and that sort of stuff. And non-point source, it can be like just over time, and it's not like you can't exactly say where it's from.
So one of the big effects of pollution is eutrophication, and this occurs from nutrient runoff. Usually this is from like fertilizer. This would be like nitrates or phosphates, and this is bad for water because it creates dead zones. And you might think that nutrients might be good for the water quality. Like more nutrients, that means like more growth, right? But you would be wrong. This actually causes algae blooms. And again, you might think algae blooms are good, right? Because they're photosynthetic organisms and they create oxygen. But one big problem with algae blooms are that they decrease the turbidity of the water. So less sunlight reaches the bottom of the pond or lake. Also, when these algae die, they decompose, and those decomposers use up all the oxygen, creating dead zones in the water, which makes it really hard for other organisms to live. So also we have heavy metals such as lead, mercury, and arsenic. And these are all detrimental to human health. Lead can cause like birth defects or developmental defects. Arsenic, that's really toxic to the human nervous system. And mercury also can bioaccumulate in the human body. And all of these can get into the water supply by runoff from either like factories or other pollutant sources. And these can also bioaccumulate. So bioaccumulation, this is the increasing concentration of pollutants as they go up a trophic level. So let's say we got some like phytoplankton over here, and then they take in they're in water with like polluted with like arsenic or something, and then part of the arsenic goes into here. And then maybe we have like something that eats the phytoplankton, let's say like some small fish, and then it keeps on going up. Maybe this is like bigger fish. And then this goes to humans. And all along this route, the pollutant gets magnified, and eventually it becomes a real danger to human health. So next we have plastics, and you've probably heard a lot about this by now. Plastics can get stuck in the marine animals' throats, or they can mistake them as food and eat them. And plastics can also bioaccumulate through this method. And overall, these just decrease the biodiversity of marine environments. We also have coliform. And this is, as mentioned before, this comes from human sewage that is untreated. And if this gets into the water supply, it can cause all sorts of human health problems and diseases. So this is generally bad to have. Alright, so you have one part of the FRQ answer, but the other part is what are solutions to these problems. So we got two laws which you need to know. We got the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. These are pretty self-explanatory. Clean Water Act basically limits the amount of pollutants you can put into bodies of water, and Safe Drinking Water, the number of pollutants which you can put into drinking water. And other methods to clean water. So we have the steps. First we have filtration. When cleaning water, this just gets rid of any large sediments that pass through. We have stuff like fluorination and fluorination. Both of these help to prevent or kill microorganisms that might be in the water. And fluorination also has the additional benefit of helping to protect your teeth enamel. So, a way to reduce runoff, which could cause eutrophication as mentioned, we could add riparian zones to the edges of our streams. And basically these riparian zones would basically be like trees or bushes, or basically like plant growth along the banks of a stream. And this would help prevent some of the excess, for example, pesticides or fertilizer from leaching into the water. So for plastics, plastics is a pretty hard problem to deal with, especially since plastics are like so widely used. But one way to help prevent the spread of plastics in water is to, like for instance, organize beach cleanups. These seem kind of small scale, but when done over time, it really adds up. Also, for any one of these problems, you can also put just government action. And this may seem kind of vague, but if you look at the FRQ scoring guidelines for all the questions, you will see that a lot of them have stuff like government action on here, and you will get the points if you put that for your answer. So now we are moving on to soil pollution. So one of the big causes of soil pollution is acid deposition. And this is from air pollution, which we talked about in the last segment. But basically, this gets into the soil and it decreases the pH of the soil. Specifically, it decreases the pH of the O layer. So if you remember, we got our layers of soil. We got the O layer, the A layer, B layer, and then there's layers underneath this, but usually there's not many questions asking about the layers underneath. So O layer, we got our humus, which is like organic material. A layer, this is like topsoil. This is also where like the roots are. And B layer, we have like clay and like other non-organic matter. So what acid deposition does is it reduces the number of microorganisms that can live in the O layer, and this affects like stuff like fungi or like bacteria, other decomposers, and this reduces the fertility of the soil since there will be less nutrients in it. Also, we have erosion, or also salinization. So this can occur from intensive farming or just like overworking the land. We also have pollution from pesticides. just from like overusing pesticides. We have mining. Oh, this can be a cause of soil pollution, but not always. Also, we have heavy metals. These can be leached from factories and get into soil. So now we're talking about some solutions to these pollutants. So for acid deposition, we already talked about this in the air pollution video, but basically either use like scrubbers on your smokestacks or just use less factories in general. So for intensive farming, which causes erosion, instead we can use something like intercropping, or we can use, like, for instance, crop cycling. And both of these methods would increase the ability of the soil to hold nutrients and decrease erosion. Pesticides, we can just not use pesticides and use something else like perhaps integrated pest management. Also, these methods would also reduce the reliance on pesticides, since there will be a greater variety of genetic diversity among your plants. Got heavy metals. To prevent this, you could set more strict regulations on what can be dumped as waste into the soil.
Alright, today we're going to talk about indoor pollution. Although it might not seem as a big problem, indoor pollution has been shown to be more detrimental to human health than both air pollution and water pollution, mostly because in modern society more people live indoors. Indoor pollution, just like all other pollution types, will start with identifying the pollutant. And then we're going to find the issue with the pollutant. Usually this is social, economic, and environmental, but because indoor pollution is mostly affecting human health, not many other animals live indoors, so we're going to mostly talk only about health issues, and then we're going to find a solution to the problem, which is these three steps will cover most FRQs and MC problems. So the three major indoor pollution you're going to find questions about are radon, which is a radioactive gas, carbon monoxide, which is a product of burning inefficiently, and asbestos, which is a result from pipe insulation and vinyl coating, vinyl sealing in floors. This is mostly in older buildings. So radon, all three of these can cause lung problems, which includes lung cancer, lung disease. Some of these might even cause cardiovascular problems. Constant exposure to stuff like carbon monoxide can cause death. Radon seeps from the floor from decaying radium. So radium decays into radon, and then the radon then goes through water or goes through the airway. Most houses actually detect radon before it's sold. And it requires a professional to, most states require a professional to detect the radon. So this is on average it kills probably 1,000 to upwards of 10,000 people per year due to lung disease. It's an estimated death, not very clear causes, because there are a lot of things that can cause lung disease from indoor pollution. Carbon monoxide is caused by inefficient burning. So when you have your fire stoves, ovens, when you're burning wood, or you have like a oven you didn't turn off the gas, it will cause carbon monoxide poisoning. It's that weird smell you have when you leave your oven on. This can cause acidification, along with if it's constant exposure, especially if you fall asleep, you can die from it. Asbestos, this is usually in, as I mentioned before, pipe insulation, vinyl sealing in floors. This is lung disease and cancer, mostly in older buildings due to it being an older used material. Nowadays, research has shown it does cause lung disease. It can get stuck in your lung. The fibers can get stuck in your lungs and kill you after constant exposure. Other indoor pollution units include particulates, tobacco, formaldehyde, molds, pesticides lead from the floor that you pick up, and carbon dioxide and ozone from open windows. Start with particulates. So particulates are usually just pollen dust. These usually cause allergy-like symptoms. So you have your sneezing, your coughing, and then obviously allergies if they're more intense, runny nose, you got your nausea, etc. Usually constant exposure will cause lung cancer, lung disease, and similar symptoms to the prior pollutants. Tobacco caused by cigarettes. So you have these can cause number one cause of lung cancer, lung disease. Formaldehyde is usually from furniture stuffing, paneling, foam insulation, and it can cause irritation in the lungs, eyes, nose, and can also, in more severe cases, nausea and dizziness. Molds, this is usually when the place is moist, and you can see it if like you have wood on the floor, you will see green dots grow. This usually causes same symptoms, lung disease, nausea, irritation, probably less severe. Pesticide and lead, this is picked up from outside when you're walking around. Lead is more uncommon in the United States due to leaded gasoline being banned. Pesticide is probably more commonly seen, but not in big cities. The diseases that they can cause are very similar to, or lead can cause usually brain damage, while pesticide usually causes lung disease, cardiovascular diseases. Carbon dioxide and ozone, these usually come in through windows and from the air. And the reason this is harmful is because, especially carbon dioxide is not as harmful, but in large amounts it can, and very sensitive people can react to carbon dioxide. Ozone is very reactive, so it can react with other stuff such as formaldehyde or tobacco and particulates, leading to more dangerous chemicals. Now I will cover some solutions. So usually when solving FRQ, MC would not require solutions as much, usually identification, but for response, they will usually ask you to identify and then to provide a solution to it. So I will mention a couple of solutions. First one is demand-controlled ventilation. This is when there's a trigger, and what happens is when certain levels of the carbon dioxide rises past a certain level, it would trigger an air replacement, and a lot of air will be pumped out, replaced with new air. This can help ventilate the system more. The most important thing when thinking about indoor pollution is the best solution is air replacement. So most buildings require a certain air change per hour. So this will be, if you have to do a math problem, you'll usually see something like this, air change per hour. So air change can come in anything from liters to kilograms of weight. Remember to get your units correct. Demand control ventilation is one of them. Obviously, you can also install new air filters. Less expensive methods is opening windows more often. This is usually if you're not in big buildings where you can't open windows, but usually in smaller houses, opening windows is probably one of the more common solutions and cheaper solutions. And then finally, this is for specifically mold. You can control the moisture levels, and that will help decrease mold. And certain chemicals react with water vapor, so reducing moisture can help keep mold levels down and dangerous chemicals down. So this is indoor pollution.
All right, so next we'll talk about atmospheric pollution. And the pollutants we're talking about, you might seem are very similar to indoor pollutants, and because some of them are the same. So first we have VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds. We have NOxes, and these include like nitrogen dioxide and nitrogen oxide. We have hydrocarbons, and these can include like methane and like aldehydes like formaldehyde. And all of these combine to form photochemical smog. So this is like a really common multiple choice question you might find, so you should just memorize these. And we have particulates. They come in PM10 and PM2.5. you probably don't need to know this specifically, but these just stand for what size the particulates are. So next we will talk about some pollutants from combustion. So we have carbon monoxide, which is created from incomplete combustion, and we have carbon dioxide. And a really common question about carbon dioxide would be like which acts helped reduce this, and this would be the Kyoto Protocol. It's in 1997. Next we have ozone. This is a really high yield topic, so you should really know ozone in depth. So what you should know is that there are actually 2 layers of ozone. One is the stratosphere. This one helps protect us from harmful UV radiation from the sun. And there's also one in the thermosphere. There's ground level ozone. And this is the one that is detrimental to human health. Next we have sulfur dioxide. This is usually created from burning of coal and other industrial processes. And this is bad because it creates acid rain. And in general, all of these pollutants cause fatigue, headache. They can cause like irritation of lungs and could cause nervous system damage. And usually if you get a question about this and like what are the harmful effects of atmospheric pollution on human health, you can usually get away with just writing down one or a couple of these and you'll be fine. Alright, so some solutions to atmospheric pollution or reducing it would be, for photochemical smog, we would reduce use of the constituents that make it up. So reduce use of volatile organic compounds or hydrocarbons. And for instance, FOX can be found in paint. So for carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, most of this is, well, anthropogenically, most of this is produced from transportation. So reducing the production of these would be using less cars or using more fuel efficient cars. And this would also reduce ground level ozone, which is the ozone that is harmful to human health. For the stratospheric ozone, which is the one that is helpful for us and blocks harmful UV rays, we actually want to increase the amount of stratospheric ozone. So to do that, we would use less CFCs, which are chlorofluorocarbons, which destroy ozone. Sulfur dioxide, these are mostly created from factories, coal burning. So ways to reduce sulfur dioxide emission would be, you could add scrubbers to coal stacks to get more sulfur dioxide out of the air, or you could reduce the consumption of coal in general, which would stop a large majority of sulfur dioxide production.
Now I'm going to talk about 3 relatively rare type of pollutions: thermal, light, and sound. You usually won't see these on free response or multiple choice questions, but 1 or 2 might appear. The questions change every year, so I will cover these 3. Thermal pollution is defined as degrading of water caused by changes in ambient water temperature. So what happens is when power plants, what they do is you have to burn large amounts or heat large amounts of water and use water as part of the coolant system so that stuff doesn't overheat. This is all power plants, coal, natural gas, and nuclear plants all require coolants, and a large amount of water is using coolants, and when the water is dumped, they're usually at a very high temperature. What would happen is when you dump all that water into your hot water, and when you dump it into your lakes and rivers, it would increase. Even if the water is perfectly fine, if it's hotter, sometimes it might increase the temperature by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. This may not seem like a lot, but a reminder that 1 or 2 degrees can change a lot of stuff, especially for the organisms living inside it. For example, if our body temperature were to increase by 1 to 2 degrees, we would have a fever. So 1 to 2 degrees inside a pond or a lake cause severe damage to certain organisms. First of all, it can denature enzymes. So That's one of the first ones. Also, it can lower dissolved oxygen levels, which is important for fish and other aquatic organisms that includes amphibians, turtles, aquatic reptiles, etc. And this would decrease reproductive rates and lower food and change metabolic rates. So a solution to thermal pollution is to usually hold the water, or like make sure the water is cooled before dumping it into lakes and rivers, using better, more heat efficient power plants, etc. So this is thermal pollution. The second rare type of pollution is light pollution. This is the one that is most commonly known. Light pollution is for big city folk. You have your city lights, your big cities, and what would happen is the city lights would be on the whole time, and it would seem like it's day even though it's night, and it would block out their stars. All you can see is the moon, because the moon's close and it appears bright. And what would happen is, usually this would cause, obviously it's aesthetically unpleasing, so this is a social issue. You got your environmental issues. This would hurt nocturnal animals, such as owls and raccoons. This would also hurt your sleep cycle, which, if you want to be fancy, or if you take an AP bio, your circadian rhythm. Slash melatonin levels. And although this is not proven, it is also said that it could cause human health problems. And there's not many solutions to this. Also it can cause disoriented birds and turtles. So your baby turtles will start walking towards the light. Usually the light would be the moon, but sometimes it will be the city lights, and then they'll get crushed by cars. And then your birds, usually they'll follow like star patterns maybe, and when they see that there's no stars, they'll get disoriented and land in the city, and then they'll get lost basically. Not many solutions to this. Obviously, turning off lights in a large city is something very hard, but as I mentioned before, this is a very big social issue. As Al Gore would describe it, it would be a moral issue. So it's just a change on viewpoint rather than government policies. The last thing I'm going to talk about is sound pollution. So sound pollution is probably one of the least detrimental, but also one of the ones that is most commonly seen around big cities. So sound pollution is noise with a harmful impact, so it has to be very harmful. This would usually be caused by transportation, your cars, your construction of buildings, and then obviously people talking, dogs barking, all those fun stuff would also cause noise pollution. But usually the two big ones, if there was a question about it, you want to mention cars and construction. Transportation and construction are two big ones, the loudest ones. What this would usually cause, this is also, as I always described it, social and moral problem, where it's us being too greedy. But this can be very easily solved by noise barriers and correct urban planning. So I'll start with a solution for this one first, because this is actually a very simple solution, urban planning. So this would be like installing noise barriers and just like making the place more like a garden or something, where the noise travels with more trees. Noise travels much difficult throughout the streets. But obviously many cities, especially if you see places like China or India, even New York City, Chicago, you'd see that urban planning is not really good. And what would happen is this would alter prey and predator detection. So many preys and predators use sound to detect. So this will be detrimental to them. Examples of this would probably include, for example, a cat sometimes makes sound when they walk. Usually they don't, but if they make sound when they walk, a mouse can hear them. And if it's very loud all the time, the mouse would not hear them. The cat would kill the mouse, even though the mouse was supposed to be survive. That would be an example. And this can also cause human health issues, especially around older and younger people. When there's a lot of sound, it can cause tinnitus, along with other ear problems. It can be very annoying, change their circadian rhythm, just like light pollution. It's not fun living near a train station or a highway. These are common issues with sound pollution.